Which watch should you choose when you're going on an expedition in cold places or warm places or whatever? I'm going to talk about different watch choices in expeditions and long distance travel, why you might choose one or the other, and I'll share my choices and the reason for them. So let's start off with my Casio Pro Trek. This thing I got like a long time ago, over a decade, still keeping time within 15 seconds. It's got a nuclear alarm clock sensor where it connects to the nuclear alarm or the nuclear clock to reset itself. It's got a compass, a barometer, and an altimeter, and it can never remember with plus all the timer modes and everything. Now you might wonder, why didn't I go with just a digital watch? Here's a very good reason. It's got the digital display down in the bottom, so you can see time and all that. I can set the timer here like a stopwatch. So if I need to time something, it's super handy. But the reason I go with an analog watch is because when I'm skiing along and I've got my watch on, typically the challenge is that I need to ski 75 minutes, rest for 10 to 15, and then ski another 75 minutes to keep my schedule going. And the only way to do that instead of skiing till I'm tired is to use a watch. However, when I've got my glove on, for example, my Outdoor Research Mega Altimits here, and I need to check the time, like, oh, it's really hard to dig it out on top, but what I do is I wear it military style, where I flip the watch around on the inside of my wrist, and what I do is as I'm skiing along, I can grab my ski pole, I'm skiing along, and as I'm skiing, I can take my pole, hook under my glove, pull, check my watch, take a glance, and then keep skiing so I never have to stop. I don't want to stop and check my watch because that wastes time and distance. So as I'm going, I literally keep skiing, glance down, and keep going, and I have no problems. Now that all sounds great, like, Aaron, why do you want an analog instead of a digital watch? Here's why. Because of polarized glasses. If I put my polarized glasses on, and I look at my digital portion of my watch in the little screen there, and I look at this angle when I pull my wrist up, I look at it and I can totally read it. But at this angle, when I can just want to glance at my watch, the LCD is turned completely black. So that is a real challenge, plus the contrast in the sky. In the glove, it's pretty hard to see, but the ultra white, bright, visible hands are super easy to see, so I can time myself perfectly at 75-minute intervals and have no problem with that. Compare that to, like, my Terry, he brought a, we didn't even talk about this, I made a mistake of not warning him about that, is on our expedition, he brought his inexpensive Timex, and it got so cold, his Timex, just like the Garmin watch here, my instinct is that it blacked out more than once. His inexpensive watch, as we're skiing along, he looks, he's like, well, I have no time or idea what time it is because my watch has gone dark. So his inexpensive Timex or super inexpensive Casio simply died. More than once on the expedition, we had to reset it, which is no big deal. But if he was the ski leader and he was skiing along and he tried to glance at his watch because he had polarized glasses as well, he couldn't read it. So I had to be the timekeeper because at an analog watch, I can glance and it's 7:22 or thereabouts. Yeah, easy. LCD digital watch, you got to look at the number, you got to analyze it. It only takes an extra second or two and it doesn't sound like a big deal, but when I'm skiing along and I glance, I got to stare at this thing, especially like the Suunto watches. Some people swear by those and love them. Whew, me, no way. Oops, dropped my ski pole. So that is a factor for why I chose an analog watch, is it's just so much easier to glance and tell the time, especially in the morning when I'm curled up in my sleeping bag and cold. I can glance at my watch. Even when it's this close, I can still see what the time is. To read the time, I have to get it far enough away from my eyes to read an LCD time. But even just super blurry when I'm bundled up, that's easy to use. Now, big advantage of this, it's super tough. You can see I've cracked it into all sorts of stuff in aluminum. The rubber style wristband is super nice. So definitely check out the Casio ProTricks. Now compare that to my Omega Seamaster. This is another option that I've worn. This thing is a tank as well, and it is, oops, pure analog. Now, pure analog watches with no digital timer, you think, oh, that's terrible. Well, come to think of it, it's not that terrible because, like on a dive style watch, this is again analog, so I can wear it on my wrist. I can just glance. I've got the time. I don't have to stand there. The seconds don't matter for the travel, but the distraction when I'm moving and having to stare at this and falling over and getting hurt, that's a big deal because I can, I don't want to get hurt, of course. I can, again, flip this guy over, read it just like my other analog and digital ProTrick, and I can ski along with my Casio Seamaster and no problems. But for timing, let me show you a sweet trick on these bad boys, is that for 60 minutes and less, what I can do is dial backwards with the bezel until I put the pointer right on the minute hand, and then from there on the minute hand, as the minute times pass, this watch will actually, with the minute hand pointing at the bezel that it's adjustable, I can see up to an hour elapsed of time. So really, even though 75 minutes skiing, this doesn't make sense, but for shorter minute-long times, this makes total sense. Now you might say, Aaron, this is a problem with a completely analog watch. There is no digital anything in this thing, no crystal, no battery, anything. Well, what do you have to do about it? Don't you have to unwind it and mess around? No, because this watch is what's called an automatic. It's going to be really hard to see, but you can see the automatic motion in there. As I'm moving around, the little counterweight in there actually continues to continuously wind the watch. So as I'm skiing, hiking, even when I'm sleeping and rolling and flipping back and forth and over, this watch automatically winds. The Omega and the Rolex are really incredible. This guy keeps to within 2 seconds plus or minus every day. Rolex is super similar. Now they're really, really expensive depending on your financial status. But boy, this thing is a tank. It can handle literally just about anything. Ultra cold weather, no problems. Now you might think too, this is a problem with the metal bracelet. I've got a solution for that. I bought the NATO band, so I can actually, at home, I'm not going to unpin this watch in the field, but I've got the Bergeon tools where I can properly get in there without scratching the heck out of my watch, unpin the spring bars within seconds, take it off, put my NATO band on there, and now the watch becomes super light, and I can strap and adjust this. Some of these watches, you can also purchase a rubber band, I mean, not like a rubber band, but a rubber strap, all sorts of options. So the fully automatic style watch is really, really nice. And plus, like the Omega design, I can actually untether this, open it up, let's see, where is it? Pop the clasp, and then expand it a lot. So if for some crazy reason I needed to wear my watch outside on my jacket, I still actually can. And I can actually tighten that bad boy up again once I've expanded it. And then if for some reason I needed to tie my watch outside of my jacket, it is a very flexible device. Again, I wouldn't say completely impervious to cold because the specifications say, 0 degrees or whatever, but I've taken this thing to like ultra crazy cold and no problems. I click it back in, push the shrink, and then I'm back in business. And just like the NATO bands, same sort of thing. Now, you might wonder how come I haven't talked about Apple smartwatches or my Garmin Instinct. Well, check at the screen. Yeah, it's dead because I haven't charged this thing up. Now, for people who love Apple watches and Android watches and whatever, or Garmin Forerunners or the Instincts or whichever model you might carry, they're super nice. But what happens when the battery poops out? What are you going to do? This guy is solar powered. The last time I set this watch, other than for time zone, was in 2012, and it's been within 1 to 15 seconds, depending on how much nuclear signal I get. My Omega, This thing has been within 1 to 2 seconds per day. So over a long, like a month-long expedition, the worst I can have happen is lose 2 minutes at most. No problem. On a week with no charge, with your Apple Watch or this guy, totally dead. So even like the Apple Ultra Watch 2, it's got a 72-hour power base. That's 3 days maximum. I mean, a lot of times actively using that thing, I'll go on a trip, leave a Friday, come back a Monday. I'm not charging. I'm not having to carry a charging brick or anything like that. Even though I have one, I just don't use it that much other than jogging and training, because when I'm out expeditioning, I've been to the Apple store and they say, oh, well, you could just charge it. I've got a satellite phone to charge. I've got my GPS to charge. I've got my phone I want to charge and my cameras for pictures. The last thing I want to do is mess around with a rechargeable watch. So me personally, on a long, cold expedition where it's really out there, plus this guy has an aluminum bezel. It's super tough. This is sapphire crystal with a ceramic bezel. This guy, I mean, it's got the G-Shock style, and it's done pretty well, so there is that. But when it gets ultra cold, poop, dead battery. My solar, this thing's worked at like the South Pole across Greenland, -40, no problem. This, no bueno. So depending on the choice of watch you want and what you're doing, a lot of people are going with the smartwatch nowadays, but in extreme locations, I got to tell you, the Megas, the Solar Casios, the Tag Heuer Solars, those guys versus a rechargeable smartwatch or smart device. My choice is clear. One of these two, depending on what I'm doing. That's the way I go. So your mileage may vary. Links below to everything in this video. Please ask me questions so I can hopefully answer them. It may take me a while, but that way I can get an answer to you and share it for everybody else. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.